Okay, this video is going to be on replacing the steering rack on my 2005 Dodge Grand Caravan. This will cover 2005 through 2007 directly, and 2001 through 2004 also covers that, though it's a different rack and you will find some slight differences. Now, this is absolutely the most miserable repair that I've ever done on any vehicle. I am not looking forward to this, and I did it about a year and a half ago, which brings up the next thing. Is I recommend that you do not buy a rebuilt steering rack. This one is an Edelmann, got it on Rock Auto. It's brand new, not remanufactured. The previous one I purchased was by BBB Industries. You may have seen my other video on that. You can look it up, where I just basically lambasted them, because all I think they did was spray paint it and ship it out. That thing leaked from day one. Next bit of advice: when you have your brand new steering rack, put a piece of tape around here. You're wondering why? You will see later in the video. So just put a piece of tape there. Now, this video is probably going to be different from most you see. I'm going to tell you what to do, but for the most part you will not be seeing me undoing bolts, or even telling you what size socket to use. I mean, it's pretty easy. You can figure that out yourself. So this video, I'm going to make it as short and sweet as possible, direct to the point. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. I hope to be done by 5. That gives you an idea of what you're in for when doing this job. Tools you're going to need: you're going to want your different breaker bars. You're going to want ratchet socket extensions, impact wrench. If you don't have one of those, this job's going to be even more miserable for you. And also important to have some large wrenches as well as the large sockets. I'm talking 21 millimeters is what you're going to be using a lot of. Get your car up on a pair of good quality jack stands. If you don't have jack stands, or if you don't have good quality jack stands, do not proceed. Have your rear wheels parking brake on all the way, and both sides of both wheels chocked. And place the wheels under your engine with the outside of the rim facing up. If you can't do any one of these steps, do not proceed. Okay, your first step is going to be break this nut loose on your inner tie rod end. Be warned, it doesn't volunteer, and when you have your wrench, open end wrench on there, have it all the way on as far as it'll go. Otherwise you're going to start to bugger the corners over. Next will be, on your outer tie rod end, there's a nut down here that you have to remove. It may be a castle nut, which will have a cotter pin through it. Sometimes they're just a nylon lock nut. Remove that. Now, some people are able to remove that nut, whack this with a hammer, and this ball joint will pop right out. I've never been able to do that. Never worked for me. I've always had to put on this ball joint separator, and I just tighten it down, then well, now that that's loose, you're going to put a pair of vice grips on the inner tie rod end to hold it steady so it doesn't spin, and you're going to unscrew the outer tie rod end, and you are going to keep count of each full revolution. And then once it comes off, I just use a paint pen, and I'll write the count up there on the plastic shield there. And so when I put it back together and I put this back on, I am going to screw it back on the same number of counts. This is not a replacement for alignment. This is just going to get you close, and I'll tell you one thing, it's not even going to be remotely close. So after you get this job done, you're going to need an alignment. Otherwise, you're going to need new tires and an alignment. Now at this point, before I get too filthy, I like to wash my hands with some Dawn dishwashing liquid and move to what I need to do on the inside of the vehicle. First thing, before you disconnect the steering column from the steering rack, you're going to want to secure the steering wheel. If you don't do this and your steering wheel winds up spinning a revolution and then you put it back together like that, your clock spring down in here is going to break. Then all of a sudden your horn won't work, then your cruise control won't work, and nothing here is going to work. Also, the airbag light may come on because your airbag will no longer work. If you do break that, I made a video of it because last time I replaced the rack, I forgot to do this step, and that's exactly what happened. So after that, you're going to move down here to the floor, and we're going to be disconnecting down here. So you're going to remove your floor mats, and you're going to peel the carpet back to expose down there. Okay, looking up from up above your brake pedal, up underneath the dash, you're going to see this nut with a little cotter pin in there. You're going to pull that pin out, and then you're going to turn this nut, and that nut will stay attached to this bracket. That nut doesn't come off, but this pin that you're screwing will come out. It's a keyed pin, so it has one flat side. So you're going to take that out, and this unit telescopes, so it'll drop down. Now the shaft is free. I've telescoped it down. Take a nut driver or whatever and remove these three. They're just sheet metal screws. Be warned that they have a tendency to rot, so they may just spin, so you may have to pry up on them with a little pry bar or something to get them to come out, and then pull this plastic cover off. And then you will just remove the boot. This little section of video is actually a do-over after the fact, because somehow I managed to not record this section, but this whole undercarriage has to come off. And what you're going to do is you're first going to undo, let's see, get a shot here, these two bolts here that hold their hose clamps. You're going to take them off. You got to undo them from up above. Then there's 10 millimeter here and a 10 millimeter here, those two there. They hold on your evap pump. Undo those. Then there's these bolts, 13 or 15 millimeter on each side of your control arm bushing there. Take those off. They actually screw into the aluminum framework. The framework is threaded there. And then there's roughly, I don't know, what, about a dozen of these 21 millimeter bolts around the plate. And there's one, I think it's this one right here, is 18 millimeters, but they all through bolt. See the nut up there? So you're going to have to hold a wrench on one end and your impact wrench or whatever you have on the other end to get those off. And these nuts are stamped. So when they stamp them, it distorts the metal a little bit so that they grip onto the bolt, and they can't back out. So it does make it a bit of a bugger to loosen them up and put them on. So you're going to want to take all those off, and then this plate will drop down for you. All right, to get this long frame bolt out, especially if yours has I've had more rust than this on one in the past, you're probably going to need a big breaker bar. Okay, got the plate out. This sensor here, there's a lock on there. Undo that lock and then remove the wire harness. If you have clamps on your hoses, undo the clamps. They typically fall apart, so I'd put zip ties on there, so I'll have to cut the zip ties. And then back here at the vapor canister, you're going to undo this bolt right there. If you have clamps, undo them. Zip ties, I'm cutting off. Then we're going to want to, this vapor canister, there's a bolt down here. Undo that bolt that holds the vapor canister. The front of the vapor canister is held on with grommets. So we are going to pull the vapor canister out of the bracket and get it out of the way. Now with the vapor canister out of the way, you'll be able to get to those two bolts there. There's one up there holding the bracket in. Get this bracket out of the way. And then we will have limited access to our hoses for the power steering rack right there. Now if you have a steering cooler, which would be right in this position here. I see how I have that loop there. You'll have a loop there, but it'll have all coil fins across it, and there should be connector hoses there. Get yourself your catch pan, put it underneath there, disconnect one of those hoses, and let all the fluid drain out into the pan. Now Dodge did not see me worthy to bless me with such a feature, so that means I have no connector there. So I'm going to have my catch pan here, and then when I disconnect my hoses at the power steering rack, it's going to be dripping all over everything into the catch pan. So that being said, if you have that feature, disconnect it, drain it, then you can reconnect it afterwards if you want to. Then we're going to take off this bolt here and this bolt here, and that just loosens up these power steering lines to give us a little bit of play, a little bit of wiggle room to work with. Now we're going to unhook the upper line first, and you can break it loose. Let's see if I can give you a shot of it from inside the vehicle. See it right there shining, taunting you, making fun of you. We're going to break that loose, and then what you do is after you break it loose, just grab it and twist and shake it and twist it with your fingers. That's the best way to do it. I mean, trying to work with it on a wrench is impossible, but you can tighten it all the way down and back it all the way out simply by wiggling it and twisting it at the same time. Fourth time doing this job, third time, whatever it is. It's the way I wind up doing it every time. Now, if you can see down there, let's see if we can get a good shot there. Got the pipes disconnected. Did the top one first. Shimmied it around with my fingers as I unscrewed the nut. And then after that, I did the lower one. You swing the arm out of the way this way. In order to remove it from the van, you're going to need the arm back over here. Just a side note. And you're going to need a long 18mm wrench. This is a Duralast. You know, they'll put Dora the Explorer's name on anything these days. But what is that? AutoZone, I think I got it at when I did the van the last time. But you can access both nuts right down through here, and all you're doing, you're just cracking them loose. That's all you're doing. The rest you do with your fingers. Okay, it's 1 o'clock and I'm about at the halfway point. You notice I got both of the hoses disconnected. This one I pulled down, so I'm draining right now. And now the steering rack is held on with 3 bolts. Actually, right there you can see the nut from one of them and the bolt down there. Same thing on the other side. You can see, if you get a peek up there, you can see the top of it there. Real lousy access with the open-end wrench, which you're going to need to put on there. But do that now, and then the steering rack will drop right out. Just watch out for the armature inside the van to that it's going to snag inside there, so you're going to have to shimmy that around to get it to drop through. Okay, on the other side you have the 2 bolts holding the other end of the rack on. They're 18mm, so you will undo both of them and then thread one back on, just a few threads to hold it into place, and then come over to the driver's side, remove this 21mm bolt and it'll drop down. Then go back over to the other side, undo that bolt, Next step is you got to tap that pin out with a punch and a hammer, and then this assembly will come off the rack. Okay, it's 1:15, and we are at the halfway point. Now remember the blue tape I said to put on there? That's your reminder. See this collar? Don't leave it behind. This comes off, and that gets snapped onto there before you install the armature. The arm will only fit on there one way, so you don't have to worry about putting it on the wrong spot. There's a flat spot on there for it to hit onto here. So after that collar is on, put the armature back on and tap the pin into place, and then we're ready to get it into position on the vehicle. And when you put it together, make sure this upper arm is straight. Otherwise, you're going to have to take it apart and redo it like I have to now. Put your tires under the car, and you're going to set your steering rack on there. But first, before you do, turn the steering wheel shaft all the way as if you were turning the car to the right, so that the driver's side shaft is at its shortest throw. Fish the passenger side up through, and when you do, make sure you stay clear of your anti-lock brake sensor wires and anything else that might be in the way. Make sure you get clear of them, and then start lifting up, feed the shaft for the steering wheel up through the hole. Be careful, there is a brake line with a spring thing protector on it that was conveniently placed in your way where you will constantly snag onto it. Get that up into place. Then inside the car, that balancer thing, lift it up and hook it onto the sheet metal inside the car. And the next step will be to just thread some of these steering unit bolts on so that they're hanging by the bolts instead of hanging by that. Now your hoses that hook onto the rack have little O-rings on there that you have to remove, and then they give you new ones to put on there. Don't skip that step. And I would recommend that upper hose, remove the O-ring, put the new one on before you put the steering rack in, because as I am finding out and remember from before, is it's real difficult to get that one in. And also your steering rack will have protective plugs in there that you're going to have to remove. Mine are black, and mine screw in, so I left them in there. But if yours are pressed in, pull them out before you install the steering rack, and then just stuff some paper towel in the holes before putting the steering rack in to keep any dirt out of there. Mine unscrew, so I'll be able to reach up by hand and just unscrew them. And then we will be attaching the lower hose first. I got the first line, the lower line, into place. Now you can't confuse the two because they're two different threads. They both take 18mm wrench, but the threads are different sizes. So you don't have to worry about mixing them up. And I hand threaded it down as far as it would go. And then I will go up into the driver's side and reach down with my long wrench through the hole and tighten it up that way. And remember, you tighten it up snug, don't kill it, because it's the O-ring that's going to do the sealing. You're not cranking it down. You want it tight enough so it's not coming loose again, but don't go killing it so that you wind up damaging it. Okay, I'll try to give you an action shot here. Tighten, flip over, tighten, flip over. I may not have to flip over, that's the last turn. We're tighten already. And that's snug. That's not going anywhere. I'll double check just for good measure. But yeah, that's all good. Now move up to the upper one. Okay, the top hose is in place, tighten down, and remember, snug it, don't fug it. Put this bracket back into place for your vapor canister, and make sure that this bolt lines up properly. Alright, very quickly now, reassembly of everything after getting the steering rack bolted into place. You're going to reattach your two hose clamps there. If you haven't already, get your bracket into place. Hook up the hoses if need be. Throw zip ties onto the hoses. Don't forget the 13mm bolt that secures your vapor canister. Lay your plate on the tires to give it support, and then hang it on each end with a screw with a bolt here. And I usually throw one in the front, just threaded to hang it there. When you put these two bolts on each side of the control arm bushing down here, they screw into aluminum. Don't over tighten them, don't strip that aluminum out. Okay, got everything tightened down. The sensor for the evap system tightened down with those two bolts there. The hoses here, their clamps are tightened down. Next step will be set your front rotors pointing fairly straight. Next step is put your tie rod ends on, the number of spins threaded on there. Then do that for both sides. Then snug this nut by hand up against the tie rod end. Then go into the van and grab the shaft that's connected to the rack and pinion. It's not connected to the steering wheel yet, and just turn it by hand so that it matches the front rotors pointed roughly straight ahead. And then just seat them down into place. Tighten your nut down on the bottom. If it's a castle nut, you got to put the cotter pin back in. And then after that, tighten this down, snug this nut down, snug it up against the outer tie rod end. Alright, now we're on the inside of the van. We're going to be putting the boot back on. What I recommend is that you put some silicone grease onto here, and you can even put a little bit onto the bottom also where it meets that ring that we transferred onto the new steering rack. You'll shimmy that down, put it into place, secure it with your sheet metal screws. Then you're going to telescope this up into the steering wheel shaft up above, and you're going to put your pin back into place. Just turn this by hand if need be. You know, if the wheels are off the ground, you're able to turn that no problem. And after the nuts tighten down, you're going to remember to put your locking cotter pin back into place. At that point, you can untie the steering wheel. Steering wheel is secured down, pins in place, rope is removed. Now, I don't care what you've seen in any other video. Do not put fluid into your reservoir and start the engine. I will show you how to properly bleed it and get all the air out before starting the engine. If you start the engine now with just fluid in the reservoir, the pump is going to whip it up into a power steering fluid meringue, and you're going to have a hard time getting that air out of the system at that point. Okay, to bleed the system, you're going to want your fluid level up pretty high, but not almost overflowing. You do not want the engine running. You want the front wheels off the ground. In fact, I haven't even put my wheels back on yet. And then you're going to go into the car, and you are going to slowly turn the steering wheel all the way to the left, then back all the way to the right, then back all the way to the left, stopping and checking your fluid level. When you get down to about here, the fill mark, fill it back up again. Keep doing that. The system takes just over a quart of fluid. So when you start approaching the bottom of that first quart, start slowing down as far as filling it up goes. Main thing is, when you're turning the steering wheel, you don't want this level to get so far down that you suck air into the system, because you're going to have to keep turning that steering wheel to work that air all the way through the pump, the steering rack, the hoses, etc., and back to here again. Because if you leave an air bubble in there, two things will happen. It'll either whip up into foam in the fluid, or it's going to get trapped somewhere in the steering rack under pressure, which means that it's going to compress and expand and make noise. And plus it's not good for performance, so etc. Could be worse. So that's your procedure. That's what I'll do now. Okay, so I got a quart of fluid into the system, turning the steering wheel back and forth. Then I started the engine and I turned it off. And I came out and checked, and the fluid level had gone from just above the fill line to down towards the lower level down here, almost at the add mark. And I filled it back up to where you see it is here. I turned the steering wheel back and forth a few more times, started the engine while it was running, came out, looked at it, turned the steering wheel back and forth a few times, double checked again, and my fluid level still hadn't changed. So it looks like I am good. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drive it, and then I will check the fluid level before I head out to work tomorrow. Make sure that there wasn't any air in there, because if you have foaming, those bubbles will dissipate and then your level will go down. And then after a few days, I'm going to check it again. But we should be good at this point. Okay, now I'm going to cover a few major points, and if you watch no other part of my video, watch this part. And if you've watched my video end to end and you're going to attempt this job, come back to this part and rewatch it. This is the most important points of doing this job. First and foremost, number one is buy a brand new steering rack. Do not buy rebuilt. That's what I did last time, and now I'm redoing the job. This is not the kind of job you want to have to redo. And that steering rack that I got that was rebuilt, I swear to God, the only thing they did to it was spray paint it. Number two, put 2 days aside to do this job. Now, I've done it several times before, and I know that even if I wasn't making this video, it would take me 12 hours to get it done. This is why a lot of times when you watch some of these videos of somebody replacing this steering rack in their driveway, when you get to the end of the video, it's dark out and they are videotaping it with a flashlight. Number three, use the right tools. I stress that you really need to have an impact wrench to do this job, because laying on your back under the car with those 21mm bolts, and you have to have an open-end wrench on one end and then the ratchet on the other end, it'll be a nightmare. Yeah, you put 2-3 days aside for that. Put 3-4 days aside for that one. But yeah, I personally would say don't attempt it without an impact wrench. It's a tool that's fairly cheap enough. If you have a compressor, invest in one. You won't regret it. Number four, secure that steering wheel before you undo the linkage between the steering wheel and the rack. I made that mistake the last time. I missed that step, and I wound up a few months later having to replace the clock spring behind the steering wheel. What will happen is first your airbag light's going to come on, then your horn's going to stop working, then your cruise control won't work anymore, etc. If you wind up screwing that up, I do have a video, because I did make a video of that repair. Number five, buy yourself the magic wrench. That's the magic wrench right there. Last time I did it, I mostly used this one, but I have a variety of 18mm wrenches, and nothing quite worked. I had a hell of a time. I wound up undoing the big bolt that's behind each wheel that holds the aluminum frame assembly to the frame of the vehicle. That puts everything out of alignment, etc. Had to pry it down and stick 2x4s in there just so I could get my fingers in and tools in to break those two hydraulic lines loose from the steering rack. And that's what you will see in most of these other videos you see online, and it is actually not necessary. This wrench here trying to reach in from the driver's side inside the vehicle down through the little opening where the where the linkage goes through down to the steering rack. This wouldn't quite, like, you couldn't move it. I mean, I could get onto the nut of the hydraulic line, but I couldn't move it enough, etc. Had a horrible time. This one here, I think it's a combination of the additional length. Most importantly, the very slim profile allows you to fit it within that space without running out of room. Just gives you enough room to move this and undo that nut nice and easy, and as well as tighten it. I suspect there is some other kind of dark magic involved with this thing, because having done this job several times, this works so well. This wrench simply is not of this earth. But this one's a Duralast. You look at the thin profile and the length. I should have measured it for you guys. Apologize. But I'm sure there's other brands that are made this way. But push comes to shove, just go pick up a Duralast, and I can't stress enough how much easier that wrench made this job. Number 6, when you're removing the rack and when you're installing the rack, grab the linkage, which is now disconnected from the steering wheel, and turn it clockwise so that to the far right as far as it'll go, so that the driver's side tie rod end is fully retracted. That'll allow you to drop the steering rack down and out of the car. So you'll be dropping it down, and I think I had to slide it over towards the driver's side to undo, get the passenger side free, and then it came right out. Going back in reverse order, make sure that linkage is turned to the far right. Get it back in there. First feed the passenger side through, lift it up, and then over onto the driver's side. And then once the linkage is inside the car, before you attach it to the steering wheel, just turn that so the linkage is approximately centered. You can't get it wrong. It only fits one way. So, number 7, before you put the new rack in, put the O-rings onto the hydraulic lines. If you forget that step, that upper hydraulic line is a bear to try to get that O-ring on there. I made that mistake again this time and wound up having to undo the whole hydraulic line and pulling it down past the rack. Other option would have been to take the rack back out of the car again. So don't miss that step. Number 8 would be, oh yes, don't forget to put that plastic bushing ring on top of the new rack before you put the linkage onto the new rack. And when you put the linkage onto the new rack and you're driving that little split pin down to attach the linkage to the rack, make sure that the linkage is pointed straight. If it's flipped over at a 90-degree angle, it will not go straight out again. You'll have to take it back apart like I did. And last but not least, please be safe. You're going to be under the car, both wheels up off the ground, wheels removed. Like I showed, I always slide the wheels under the vehicle, so if anything did happen, that it would land on there and give you some space. But please, please, please take every precaution, and then take even more precautions. Please be safe. So here we are. Steering rack is in, everything's bled out. I've had the vehicle aligned. Don't skip that step. If you don't get it aligned, you're going to be buying tires, new tires in a month, because it's going to wear them right out. My review of the Edelmann steering rack, love it. The steering on the Edelmann is much stiffer than the rack that I removed, but that's hard to judge because that rack was so incredibly sloppy. I mean, it was a mess. and I don't know what a brand new OEM steering rack would feel like. But this one is a little on the stiff side sometimes, but extremely stable. Over time, the stiffness may ease up. In fact, I think it has already. When I'm going down the highway, if I hit a pothole, a dip, a bump, a raccoon, the steering wheel would jerk to one side or the other. The vehicle would sway. I hit parts in the road and vehicle stays nice and straight. I don't get any of that kickback in the steering wheel. I'm really happy with my purchase on the steering rack. I just wish that I had bought new 2 years ago instead of redoing the job now. As far as the old steering rack, I don't know if I mentioned early in the video, it's still under warranty. It had like 3-year warranty. I could send it back. They could send me another one. Why would I want to put another one of their steering racks onto my vehicle just to have that one fail? No, thank you. And I won't send it back because I do not want them to paint it and send it out to somebody else. So I'm going to smack it real good a couple times with a sledgehammer to make sure that nobody can ever use it again. And I will cart it off to the scrapyard so it can be recycled into aluminum cans or rebar or whatever. Okay, well, that's it. If you're going to attempt this job, it is difficult. It's like I'd said before, it's one of the most miserable jobs you can do, repairing your vehicle in your own driveway. But in its own way, when you're done, if you get it done right, it's somewhat rewarding because it was so tough. So if you have a little bit of skill to you and you're ready to step to the next level, you go ahead and give it a try. If you follow my steps, it should go well for you. Well, if you've liked this video, you found it helpful, please hit that like button, hit that share button, and above all, hit that subscribe button. I appreciate your support. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.